The movie begins in the year 1945, where we see two American soldiers returning home after World War II. Seconds later, they sense something strange in the air. It turns out they've entered the Bermuda Triangle. The plane's systems start to malfunction, and suddenly they see giant birds attacking their aircraft. The two soldiers are forced to jump from the plane and deploy their parachutes. The first soldier lands safely on an island, but the second one falls into the sea. Suddenly, a massive crocodile emerges from the water and devours him. The soldier on the island witnesses everything and ends up stranded there alone, on an island filled with giant creatures. Years pass until we reach the present day, where a passenger plane flies over the Bermuda Triangle. The passengers have no idea what's about to happen. We're then introduced to one of the passengers, Hao, who is traveling with his daughter Ling. Hao isn't happy about the young man his daughter is currently dating, Chen. Hao asks his daughter Ling, "How long have you known this guy?" But Ling responds to her father in a rude way. Hao gives Chen, Ling's boyfriend, a disapproving look. Before Hao can say anything else, the plane suddenly starts shaking violently. All the passengers panic and quickly put on their oxygen masks. Things get even worse when the pilots realize the aircraft's systems have completely failed. They're forced to begin a slow, emergency descent toward the nearest island. As they descend, they spot giant birds flying toward them. The birds begin to attack the plane, causing severe damage and destroying one of the engines. The plane plummets rapidly toward the ocean. The pilots struggle to control it as best they can, but part of the plane gets ripped apart, and some passengers are violently ejected into the sky. While Hao is trying to reach his daughter, he finally manages to get to the seat next to her and fastens his seatbelt. Moments later, the plane crashes into the water and starts skidding across the surface. The pilots are shocked when they see massive rocks directly ahead. The plane slams into the rocks, causing the front section to explode. The passenger cabin breaks off and is flung away. The passengers lose consciousness. A while later, Hao wakes up and rescues his daughter, Ling, pulling her out of the wreckage and onto the island. They discover that only a small number of passengers survived the crash. Most of them didn't make it. The survivors are horrified to realize that their water supply is running low, there's no cell signal, and no way to call for help. They begin to feel hopeless, convinced they won't survive on this island for long. Hao then makes a decision. He's going to venture into the jungle in hopes of finding any resources that might help them survive. Hao enters the jungle, accompanied by Chen, his daughter's boyfriend, and another man. After walking for a while, they come across a small house hidden beneath thick vegetation. When they enter, they find a knife, which Hao quickly takes, and they also discover an old journal dating back to World War II. The third man with them turns out to be an English teacher, and he's able to understand the writing inside the journal. He reads that the island is filled with giant monsters. Realizing the danger they're in, the three of them rush back toward the beach to warn the others about what they've just learned. Meanwhile, back on the beach, a man named Fang is having an argument with a flight attendant over a bottle of water. Another man named Li steps in to stop Fang and even punches him in the face. A fight breaks out between the two, and they both fall to the ground. One of the flight attendants tries to separate them and calm things down, but none of the other passengers step in to help. Then Li's pregnant wife intervenes, trying to stop her husband from fighting. Li's wife finally manages to calm him down, but Fang is still furious and wants to start the fight again. He angrily pushes the flight attendant into the water. Suddenly, the people on the beach notice something moving in the water, and in an instant, a giant crocodile emerges and devours the flight attendant in front of everyone. Panic breaks out. Everyone starts running as multiple crocodiles crawl out onto the beach, attacking and eating those who couldn't escape in time. A few minutes later, Hao and his group return to the beach, only to find the place completely deserted. They're shocked. They spot large crocodile tracks in the sand. Hao believes some of the others might still be alive, so they immediately set out to search for them. Meanwhile, on the other side of the island, the remaining survivors are still running for their lives, being chased by the fast and deadly crocodiles. The creatures manage to catch and kill several people as they flee. In the chaos, the group of survivors splits into two, each going in a different direction to escape the crocodiles. The group that includes Li and his pregnant wife reaches a calm, quiet area and finds a freshwater stream. They rest for a bit and drink from the clean water, but soon after, they hear noises coming from the jungle. They tense up, fearing danger, but it turns out to be Hao and his group arriving. Chen, Ling's boyfriend, sees Ling and tells her, "I brought this hammer to smash the crocodiles if they show up." Hao looks at him and replies sarcastically, "You couldn't even kill a chicken." Not long after, Hao suddenly senses tremors in the ground, and strange rumbling sounds start getting louder. Everyone freezes in place, terrified. What they didn't realize was that a giant crocodile had been hiding behind the rocks the entire time. The massive beast reveals its full, towering size as it climbs onto the rocks. It slowly brings its head close to one of the survivors, staring at him with fury. The man is so scared, he loses control of himself. frozen in terror. The group watches in horror as the giant crocodile devours him, completely helpless to stop it. Then they grab each other and run, fleeing for their lives once again. But the giant crocodile doesn't give up. It chases after them at high speed and suddenly lunges at Hao, trying to bite him. At the very last second, Hao narrowly escapes. The crocodile then spots a woman trapped between some rocks, and sadly it snaps her up in a single bite. The rest of the group manages to escape with their lives, running as fast as they can. Hao leads them back to the abandoned house he had discovered earlier and says, "We'll hide here for the night." As Chen tries to enter the house, Hao stops him and says, "Where do you think you're going? You said you could kill the crocodile, right? Good, then you'll stay out here and guard the place while we sleep in case another one shows up." Hao had injured his arm while jumping away from the crocodile. His daughter, Ling, tells him, "I found these inside the house." Hao takes what she found. It's a bullet. He splits it in half to extract the gunpowder, then pours it directly onto his wound. He tells Chen to light it. As the powder ignites, Hao winces in intense pain, but by doing this he cauterizes the wound and stops the bleeding. That night, the group gathers around a campfire, and Hao ties ropes around the area from all directions to create a barrier and prevent the crocodiles from sneaking in. They all sit and eat the leftover food they had brought from the plane. After a while, everyone heads off to sleep, leaving only Hao and the English teacher still awake. Suddenly they're shocked when a human skeleton falls down from a tree. They assume it must be the person who had written the journal they found earlier in the house. The next morning, while everyone is still asleep, Hao heads out to look for fruit or anything edible, especially so his daughter would wake up and find something to eat. Meanwhile, elsewhere on the island, Fang is still alive, and he's with a woman named Lychee. Lychee is obsessed with recording everything happening on the island. She wants to document it all on video so that if they make it back home, she can upload it online and become famous. Lychee suddenly realizes she stepped on something extremely sticky. She slips and falls on a strange object that's secreting the sticky substance, and her entire body gets covered in it. She has no idea what it is, so she turns to Fang for help, asking him to wipe the goo off her, but Fang is disgusted and refuses to touch it. So Lychee gets up and walks away to clean herself off. What neither of them realizes is that the object she slipped on is actually a giant spider egg, and it hasn't hatched yet. Meanwhile, back at the house, Ling wakes up and steps outside to look for her father. But the group soon discovers that they're now surrounded by giant insects, and the entire area is filled with smoke. Ling quickly wakes the others, urging them to escape immediately before the insects notice them, especially since the old house isn't strong and could collapse at any moment. The group carefully makes their way through the fog, trying not to make noise or draw attention. Luckily, the giant insects are asleep, but one man feels something wet dripping onto his head. It's fluid from one of the insects. In that instant, the giant insect wakes up and devours the man in front of the others. The team witnesses what just happened and realizes that all the insects have woken up and are now heading straight for them. Without hesitation, they start running as fast as they can, with the giant bugs chasing close behind. Hao hears their screams in the distance and immediately rushes toward them. Meanwhile, the group is sprinting through the jungle, but suddenly, a giant spider appears in front of them, blocking their path. The spider begins stabbing at them with its sharp legs, but just in time, the English teacher shows up and distracts the spider. The spider turns its attention to the teacher and chases after him, giving the group a chance to escape. But before they can even catch their breath, more giant spiders emerge and start coming after them. Terrified and in full panic, they run for their lives. Ling gets caught in a massive spider web, and the group immediately stops to help her, ripping through the web until she's free. They continue their escape and finally manage to get away from the insects, hiding beneath thick vegetation, hoping the spiders will move on and leave them alone. Just then, they hear someone approaching. It's Hao. He notices insects crawling on the trees nearby, and without a second thought, he shouts to draw their attention, intentionally luring them toward himself to give his friends a chance to escape. Hao manages to successfully distract the spiders and escapes. He runs back to the abandoned house, where he finds the English teacher waiting inside. What they didn't know was that a giant spider was lying in wait outside, setting up an ambush. The two men were waiting for the right moment to leave, but suddenly the spider strikes from behind, injuring the teacher badly. Hao fights back, slashing at the spider's legs and managing to cut off part of one. The spider retreats for the moment, but the teacher is fatally wounded. He dies within seconds. Hao is now left completely alone. The spider returns, now climbing over the roof of the house. It strikes again, this time slamming Hao into the wall so hard that it breaks. The spider grabs Hao by the leg, trying to drag him away and finish him off, but Hao fights back, breaks free and runs at full speed. He then throws the grenade he had taken earlier from his daughter at the spider, causing a massive explosion that kills the creature instantly. Meanwhile, the rest of the team is still alive and has finally escaped the spider zone. They reach a small river, which they need to cross to continue their journey. They begin wading through the water toward the other side, but suddenly, a giant crocodile crocodile appears again. Everyone is terrified and frozen in fear. Chen tries to be brave and charges at the crocodile, but he trips and falls. The crocodile sees an easy target and prepares to devour Chen, but just in time, Hao appears and rescues Chen at the last second. The crocodile roars and lunges toward the group, heading straight for Hao, but Hao dodges skillfully, leading the crocodile back into the water. The creature eventually retreats and disappears, leaving them alone for now. Hao reunites with his daughter Ling, and she throws her arms around him in relief. He promises her everything is going to be okay. Meanwhile, Lychee and Fang reach a waterfall, where they immediately drink from the fresh stream. Lychee starts cleaning herself off, finally washing away the sticky substance still clinging to her. A few moments later, she hears strange noises in the water, and realizes there might be a dangerous creature nearby. Before she can react, Fang suddenly shows up behind her, trying to joke around and flirt, pretending they're bride and groom. But Lychee is disgusted. She refuses and slaps him hard. Just as Fang and Lychee are about to move on, a crocodile suddenly bites Lychee's legs and starts dragging her away. In panic, she grabs onto Fang's legs, trying to stop herself from being pulled into the water. But Fang, being selfish and cowardly, kicks her several times, trying to make her let go. In the end, the crocodile devours Lychee completely, dragging her under. Back to the main group. They're walking through the jungle when, to their surprise, they stumble upon the wreckage of an old plane. It appears to be the same plane the soldiers were in at the very beginning of the story. They search through the wreckage for anything useful, and sure enough they find a weapon and a working radio transmitter. Ling quickly takes advantage of the working radio and tries to contact someone for help. To her relief, someone answers. She explains their exact location, and the person on the other end says, "We're sending rescue helicopters your way." The group is overjoyed, filled with hope for survival at last. They immediately begin heading toward the shore, but on the way, they run into Fang. The team never really trusted Fang, but at this point they had no other choice, so they reluctantly allow him to join them. Hao pulls Fang aside and warns him, "Don't even think about doing anything sneaky, and stay away from my daughter." The group eventually arrives at a large river that they must cross by swimming, but Jia, who is pregnant, can't swim across. So the team works together to build a makeshift raft from plants to help her float across safely. Hao volunteers to get into the water and pull the raft. He swims across and safely reaches the other side with Jia. After that, the rest of the team jumps into the water and begins swimming. Everything seems calm and the plan is going smoothly, but then Hao spots something that makes his heart drop. The giant crocodile has reappeared, lurking nearby. The group panics, swimming as fast as they can to reach the other side. Ling and Chen manage to make it across safely, while Fang, terrified, starts swimming frantically. But instead of heading toward the others, he swims off in the opposite direction, trying to escape on his own. Li is still in the water, pushing the raft that carries his pregnant wife, Jia, toward the shore. But it's clear that there's no hope. The giant crocodile is getting closer. In a heroic moment, Li shoves the raft forward with all his strength, sacrificing himself to save his wife. The crocodile devours him, and Jia screams in agony, crying uncontrollably for her husband. Fang rejoins the group on the shore, but the crocodile turns its head toward them, preparing to strike again. Hao opens fire on the beast with the gun they found earlier, giving the rest of the team a chance to run and escape. But the bullets have no effect. The crocodile climbs onto land and starts chasing them. Hao continues to fire at the creature, desperately trying to hold it back, but nothing is working. He narrowly escapes being bitten and dives out of the way just in time. The crocodile charges after the others, who split up into two groups to increase their chances of survival. Fang trips and falls, and Ling sees him and decides to turn back to help him. But Fang, the coward, grabs her and throws her toward the crocodile, hoping to use her as bait while he runs away. The crocodile spots her and moves in for the kill, but at the last moment, Hao appears, unleashing a storm of gunfire on the monster from above. The crocodile becomes fully focused on Hao, who continues to fire round after round at the beast. Hao keeps its attention locked on him, and Ling uses the opportunity to escape unnoticed. Eventually, the continuous gunfire begins to take effect. The crocodile's thick skin starts to tear and bleed. But then, by accident, one of the bullets hits Fang in the leg, causing him to collapse to the ground. The crocodile notices Fang lying there and immediately turns toward him. At the same time, Ling accidentally gets her foot tangled on the crocodile's leg as she tries to pull herself free. Meanwhile, the pressure and fear overwhelm Fang, and he suddenly suffers a heart attack, collapsing completely. The crocodile easily devours his lifeless body, then moves on, with Ling still clinging to its back as it walks away. Night falls. Hao, determined to save his daughter, has been tracking the crocodile's movements and finally follows it all the way to its cave. He and the others quietly enter the cave, moving with extreme caution. Inside, they spot the giant crocodile sleeping. Chen tells Jia to quietly leave the cave, but just before she turns to go, she sees the remains of her husband lying on the ground. She breaks down in tears, unable to hold it in. The sound of her sobbing echoes through the cave, and the crocodile begins to wake up. Our heroes are now in serious danger, but thankfully, Jia manages to calm down and stay quiet just in time. Hao continues searching for his daughter, moving carefully so as not to alert the monster. Eventually he finds Ling, who is still alive, and quickly moves to get her out of there. Just as they're about to leave, Chen notices something wrong. The crocodile has vanished from its spot. Suddenly they realize it's right behind Chen. The moment is terrifying. Chen freezes like a statue, paralyzed with fear. Hao has no choice. He opens fire again, trying to save Chen and protect the others. The gunshots snap Chen out of it, and he rushes to carry Ling, getting her out of the cave as fast as he can. Meanwhile, the crocodile charges toward Hao, who starts running deeper into the cave, luring the beast away from the others. Hao dashes through the narrow tunnels and just barely slips into a tight passage, escaping the crocodile's snapping jaws by inches. While Chen had already escaped the cave with Ling, he hands her over to Jia for safety, then makes the brave decision to go back and save Hao. He grabs the hammer and heads back into the cave. Meanwhile, Hao is out of options. He has nowhere left to hide, and the crocodile is about to devour him. Desperate and out of plans, Hao keeps running with nothing but sheer will until he dives into a narrow tunnel, firing his gun straight into the crocodile's face. But the bullets have no effect, and his ammo finally runs out. That's when Hao realizes he dropped the grenade somewhere in the tunnel. At that moment, Chen arrives. Hao shouts to him, "Find the grenade, quick, before the crocodile breaks through." Chen sprints into action, searching frantically through the darkness, and finally finds the grenade. He runs back toward the crocodile and throws the hammer to distract it. The crocodile turns its attention to Chen, giving Hao a chance to escape. Now being chased himself, Chen pulls the pin from the grenade and hurls it straight at the crocodile. A massive explosion rocks the cave, sending shockwaves through the tunnels. The crocodile crashes to the ground, severely wounded. It finally looks like it's dead. Hao, seeing the aftermath, walks over to Chen and says, "I was wrong about you. You're a brave young man." But just as they begin to walk away, the crocodile suddenly moves again. It's still alive. Without hesitation, Hao grabs a knife, and as he leaps down from the rocks, the crocodile lunges toward him. But Hao drives the blade upward, slashing the beast from below. The powerful strike is enough to finish it for good. The monster lets out a final groan, then collapses and dies, this time for real. Chen rushes in and pulls Hao out from under the creature's massive body. Hao is still alive, and the two escape the cave together. They reunite with Ling and Jia, and the group finally leaves the danger behind them, making their way to the shore. And just in time, rescue helicopters arrive, ready to take them home. And that's the end of the episode. Don't forget to hit that like button, and see you next time. Bye bye!